Good morning. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 5. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I am here with Lucas. What's up, Lucas?
What's going on, man? I got my I finished the mustard plaque stuck on the back of my laptop.
That's
I'm very
amazing.
excited about that.
How are the last few days for you?
Intense, but amazing. It was so good to get to go and I get to sit by your mom.
That was
a
awesome.
privilege and an honor.
That was cool.
Especially during Leif talking about Mark Lee and all the things that happened there was really cool to get to sit next to a SEAL mom and get her perspective on it. You know, right after all that happened was really neat.
Must have been intense.
It was, but your mom is not only a really just full of grace all the time, but also she's got an amazing perspective on all of it.
It's crazy.
I'm like, she was like, you know the risk whenever you send them out there, but you can't be more proud of what they're doing. So she's like, that's the risk. She's like, they come back a hero or they leave a legacy of heroes.
Wow.
I was like, dang. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to go figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So
that's deep.
That's awesome.
That's good, yeah.
So if you are watching on YouTube, you might have seen that we have a guest with us. If not, you should be on YouTube. Anyways, what's up, Danny? How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Hey, man, it's an honor. I get to invite and have one of my best friends, one of my longest friends, Danny Ziem, with us here on the podcast. Danny and I grew up together. Our moms actually taught step aerobics together.
Whoa.
And we used to hang out in daycare together back in the day, eating those honey graham crackers.
Ooh, yeah.
Throwing wooden Lincoln logs at each other.
Graham,
you remember the
Graham
Lincoln
Cracker
logs?
Gang. I do.
Remember Lincoln
I
logs?
do,
Yeah. And so anyways, our moms taught step aerobics together at a place called The Firm in Fair Oaks, California.
Yeah, so long ago.
That was a long time ago, man. Good times.
The
And
80s,
so we were in daycare together, and then we were actually in high school together, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later. And I left for the military right after high school. Danny was a year behind me, and then after that, he did a couple different things, and then he went into the fire service, which I know he'll talk about later. But always had that connection, real close friendship. Every time I'd come home on leave, I think almost every time I at least saw you for a little bit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then also a lot of times when I was just dealing with stuff and just trying to navigate coming home from deployment, and just the thoughts and the feelings and just the sleepless nights. Danny was always a guy that I could call, and he'd answer his phone at 3 a.m, and we'd be able to talk through stuff. And and now Danny works for us full time at Echelon Front. Started helping out, volunteering in 2018. Came out to a muster to help out, volunteer, and then started helping out on FTXs. Was still active in the fire department, and his commands were like, "Dude, hold on, you're going and helping Jocko and Leif? Yes, cool. Switch the shifts and all that stuff." And fast forward to the point where, a few years later, we were in a position where we were growing and expanding Echelon Front, especially the field training exercise program, and offered Danny a full-time job. And it's awesome that we get to work together, and everything that Danny's doing at Echelon Front is incredible, the impact that he delivers, and then also his unique perspective to the first responder community and world is incredible. So, man, it's an honor to have you on the podcast, man. I appreciate it. I know we've talked about it, and obviously it worked out that the muster was the last couple of days. So
yeah, it's an honor to be here, man. Cool. I've been excited about this. I for the record, I'm one of those guys that has been telling him to do his own podcast for a long time.
So, for the official record, Danny was one of those guys. Write that down and date it. Yeah. One of the very first guys that was like, "Hey, you need to do podcasts," and I would just push back for a long time, and then it was also like it just didn't make sense, and obviously all this is incredible the way that it worked out. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Growing up, what was childhood like, and family dynamic growing up, and get us through. I don't know, just whatever you want, man.
Yeah. So obviously grew up in the same area as yourself and Cody. Yep. In the Northern California region in Sacramento. Yeah. Well, Carmichael, whatever you want to call it. As far as family goes, I kind of had a close knit family for a little bit. But I'm kind of your standard broken home kid, as you're aware. Yeah. We had my mom and my dad. I'm the youngest of 5 boys, but it's a mixed family. So I have like 2 half brothers on each side. which I didn't know for the longest period of time. I just, as far as I knew, they were my brothers, right? Because I was really young. And then, but come to find out, they were my half brothers, and one was adopted. But my whole life growing up, all I knew is I was the youngest of 5.
Yeah, those were your brothers.
Yeah, those were my brothers. That's all I've ever known. And unfortunately, at a pretty young age, one of my older brothers, JC, was killed, and that was kind of when things started to go a little bit awry. It really, really affected my mom, as you could imagine, because it was my mom's child, which is now obviously significant when you think about the half brothers thing. And it left some scars. It tore everything apart. And I think I was 8 years old when that happened, and he was 18. Him, his friend, and a couple of their dates for prom were all killed in the same car, unfortunately. And so that was really a turning point for our family, and things got a little bit rough. So ended up, parents split up after that. I ended up going with my mom. Didn't have a great relationship with my dad for a long period of time. He became the sheriff, right? Like, got it. I'd only really see him when I was in trouble, which was pretty frequently, unfortunately. But man, he worked hard. My mom worked hard. But essentially, it was kind of a weird dynamic for me because I was the youngest of 5, and then suddenly I was an only child. And it was kind of unique. Obviously, one of my brothers had passed, but my other brother, which was on his half brother's side, also at the same time decided he didn't want anything to do with the family anymore. So I kind of like lost 2 brothers at once. And then, I was such a huge age gap behind everybody else that essentially it just ended up being me and my mom. And, my other brothers were either off in the military or off doing their own thing. And so it ended up just being me and my mom for many, many years. And as you know, she was working in the fitness industry, so she was running a bunch of big clubs and all that. So she was doing everything she could. So I ended up alone quite a bit by the time I was 10, 11 years old. And led me to some bad influences, and ended up on the street quite a bit as a young buck. But I'm grateful for the work ethic that my mom had and giving me everything she could. And I came up. That's kind of when we reconnected after like junior high going into high school. And I stayed in that same general area all the way through high school. I started my career path in that area and whatnot, and had my first real negative experiences with life in that period. And then and also some great growth experiences because of those things in my life as well. But yeah, for the most part, my mom was my ride or die, right? So she gave me everything she could, but she wasn't around a whole lot because she had to provide. And then, I ended up reconnecting with my dad and having a great relationship with him in my older years before he passed away a few years ago. So I'm grateful for that. But.
Yeah. So go back to your mom's work ethic. I mean, obviously, you were in a hard position as a young kid with your mom being gone all the time because kids want to be around their parents. And obviously you wanted to be around your mom, and and your mom wanted to be around you, but there's that dichotomy. It's like, okay, hey, I can hang out with my son all day long, but we got bills and we got food that we need to buy, and rent and all this other stuff. And so obviously it had to have been a hard decision for her. But from that, what did you take away from her work ethic that you think kind of like made you who you are, and or something, or maybe something that you took from that you're like, hey, as a young man you recognized it, or now as an older man, with a family, you have a wife and kids, beautiful family, what can you take from your mom's work ethic, or what have you taken and applied to your life?
So first things first, my mom's a go-getter, right? She has been her whole life. She's been through some trials and tribulations that I won't even share on here, but she's pushed through some things that like no person should ever have to deal with. And for that, I respect her greatly. But as far as her work ethic goes, man, she was out grinding. And when I look back at it now, I wish I would have had more time with her, but I appreciate the fact that the reason I missed that time is because she was out working hard. And the biggest thing that stands out to me is that she was making sacrifices to make sure I had the things that I needed. Got it. Right? And she was making sacrifices. I mean, and we're talking back in the early 90s, right? So she's working 40, 50 hours a week as essentially a single mom. Yeah, she was. At that point, standing up, I don't know if you remember all the CalFit gyms, right? So she stood up the first CalFit gym and then ran all 12 or 13 of them for the guys that were owning it. And she wrote a book called Muscles in Motion. She had a primary time slot on like the news channel every morning for fitness.
Yeah. Wow.
So she was grinding, man. So I would attribute 99.9% of my work ethic to my mom. Yeah. And my dad worked hard his whole life too. Don't get me wrong. My dad was kind of in the he was in the heavy equipment business, so he was importing, exporting, renting, selling dozers, land movers, scrapers, and stuff like that. And he was doing really well financially. I mean, I never saw any of it, but yeah. But so my mom was out grinding, and I'm forever grateful. She's still alive. She's doing well. She lives with me. Yeah. We built an apartment on my property.
That's so awesome.
For her and my wife have an amazing relationship. And my kids, man, they love her to death. She's like,
she's a sweet
she'll
lady.
come over and literally like play with the kids like for hours.
That's awesome.
So as far as who I am, who it created me to be, number one, I have a deep appreciation for challenges because I know how much my mom's overcome.
Yeah.
I have a deep appreciation for everything that I've ever had when I was younger because of what she provided for me. Mm-hmm. And I also understand now that like it doesn't matter what life throws at me. I mean, talk about curveballs and heartbreak and stuff like that. My mom's been through it all. But she always kept her head down and pushed through and kept working. Yeah. And she never quit. She never made an excuse. And so therefore I feel like that's never an option for me.
Yeah.
Like because of what she's done.
That's so awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's such a unique situation and like I said, dichotomy because I mean, yeah, you would have loved to have your mom there all the time and hanging out and do stuff.
Sure.
But she had to provide for you, and the way that she did it, it showed you what you're supposed to do as an adult.
Yeah, totally.
And it's incredible that she showed you. And you look at that from like a leadership aspect, like, you could tell people to do stuff all day long, but when you show them what it looks like, when you show them what good looks like, then they can replicate that. They can emulate that themselves and say, hey, you know what? Here's the standards that my parents set. And as you know, my parents, their work ethic is crazy high as well. It's insane. Yeah. And so it's the same thing. It's like, hey, my parents didn't say, well, these are the things that you have to do. And then you don't see them doing it. It's like, no. I saw my parents doing that. I saw them working hard. I saw them like putting in long hours and just long weeks to make things happen. Like I've said on previous podcasts before, and you and I have talked about this, and this is something I say a lot at Echelon Front. You can make excuses or you can make things happen. Absolutely. You cannot do both. And, your mom didn't make excuses. She could have made all the excuses in the world. She could have played the victim card. She could have done all that stuff. Totally. I mean, losing a child is horrific,
and then unfathomable. I can't even
splitting from her husband, and just all those things. It could have been very easy for her to be like, "All right, I'm just going to take advantage of the system." But instead, she's like, "No, I'm gonna thrive, and I'm gonna show my kids how to do this."
Yeah, and interesting fact, she actually was my first employer.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So like when she was running those gyms, when I was 14 years old, like I was obviously I was getting in a lot of trouble. I was out, when mom's away,
Yeah.
You know the saying, the cat's away, the kids will break laws. So or I go something like that. Something like that.
That's how it was in my house. So
yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, so she was running that gym, and I think I don't know what it is in California now, but like back then you had to be like 14, you can get like a worker's permit.
A worker's permit, yeah.
So I went and got a worker's permit, and she hired me to work in the gym. And I got zero preferential treatment, I'll tell you that right now. But so I was like cleaning machines. I was cleaning machines and just doing stuff around the gym, and then for some reason they thought it was a good idea to put me in the childcare area. So, like, I would help, not with, like, the infants, right?
Yeah, but you're great with kids, though.
Yeah, I love kids.
Yeah.
So I was, like, just kind of helping with the older kids and then cleaning around the gym. And, I mean, shoot, like, I'm pretty sure the hours I was working weren't legal. But,
but they were more legal than other things you were doing.
Yeah. Right. And I think, honestly, that was probably her intent, was like, hey, if I can get him in here doing stuff, then he's not out there doing stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But, I mean, she was real great about, like, if I wanted a cell phone, I had to buy it. And if I wanted extra things, I had to purchase it. Yeah. So like she worked hard to provide everything. I had everything I needed. Mm-hmm. And if I wanted something, I had to go earn it. I had to get a job. I had to save.
What a concept.
Yeah, right. I wish there was more of that these days. So, I'm forever grateful, and a lot of that work ethic, including my first job, like I said, came from her.
That's awesome. How was high school for you?
High school's good. Well, it was fun. It was. I was a terrible student. We know that. I loved playing football, and I was a relatively decent athlete.
So let me pause real quick on that. Sorry, because when you say terrible student, I get frustrated with that when people say that, especially when I know like how smart you are. You're not. You're very intelligent. You're very smart. I want you to be clear on when you say a terrible student, it wasn't because you're like getting D's and F's because you were
I was getting some of those.
Yeah, but it wasn't because you weren't intelligent. It was because of bad teachers, and a bad environment, and the whole system of like we're just going to teach people what to think, not how to think.
Yeah, totally.
Which I have a problem with.
So yeah, let me clarify that. High school was rough for me for a multitude of reasons. The first reason was I didn't care. Okay. I didn't have any buy-in. Yep. I was an angry kid. All this stuff going on in my younger period of life, like if I'm being real honest, man, I was angry. I was angry about the loss of my brother. I was angry about, even in 6th grade, one of the kids I hung out with got hit by a car and died. I experienced like a lot of death and tragedy at a very young age. And man, it hardened my heart, just scarred me up a little bit. So I was just kind of angry walking through life in general. And then, I developed an authority issue because, again, I only saw my dad when I was in trouble. So it was like he became the sheriff. So I started having authority problems. And then on top of that, like, I have to take ownership over my own attitude. And I know that now, not knowing that then as a kid. But yeah, I had a lot of teachers. I guess they're not professors at that level, but like teachers in general that I know this sounds stupid being a kid, but like I didn't get along with, and because of that anger, and my there's one thing my dad told me growing up, and it's something I tell my kids now, although I give them more clarification. He was like, "Hey, Danny, you could say anything you want to anybody you want, as long as you say it respectfully." I didn't have that respectfully thing down for a long period of time, so that caused me a lot of heartache. So I just didn't care. I was scraping by in classes, and I'll be honest, I'm not like, star athlete, but I was relatively good at sports, playing football and whatnot. And I could honestly tell you the only reason I scraped by high school was because of, some of the coaches that also taught the classes. Yeah. Shout out Kenyon. And shout out to some of the coaches.
See, that's funny because I would never shout out that man myself, but
dude, I'm telling
of my
you,
own personal
I
issues
get it.
with him.
I get it, but it's like, dude, I was pulling C's because I needed to be eligible to start. You know what I'm saying? Just keep it real. Yeah. So, man. So, but the experience of high school was awesome. I had an awesome group of friends. We had a great group of friends.
Yeah.
Not the best influences, but we had a great group of friends. And, I enjoyed it. I'm not one of those people that looks back and it's like, high school was super rough. I hated it. It was a hard point in my life. It was good. I played sports. I had good friends. A lot of those friends we're still very close with.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for that. But I would say that it wasn't like a defining moment in my life by any means, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wasn't the extremely popular kid, but I wasn't the kid that got bullied. In fact, I was like the anti-bully kid.
Yeah, you and I both were.
Yeah, I had no mercy for that type of stuff for people that do that. So, and I'm sure, let me clear this up, I'm sure I wronged some people, but in general, like that was not my MO. So
yeah, well, yeah, it wasn't your heart.
Yeah,
but you said angry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very.
Art workshop.
Oh God, bro, you really? You're gonna do this to me?
You could give the edited version, or you can give the full. I don't care, but I just think it's a funny story. I mean, we're in our 40s now, right? It's funny now. I'm 40. You're 30.
I'll be 40 in February.
Okay, yeah, that's what. Okay,
just a few behind you.
You're just a few behind me. So. I mean, we can talk about these stories now, because we're in high school together and we're in art workshop class, and Danny, like he was saying, was angry just because of general life stuff,
right?
And Hey, shout out to the good teachers out there.
Yeah,
the good teachers
you guys
out
have
there.
A hard job.
Good teachers. They all have a hard job. The good teachers, I love. I respect. I have a hard time with teachers that are just there because they know they can stay there because they have tenure and they don't care anymore. And it's like, hey, go find something else to do that you can just float along. You are impacting kids' lives, and you're in this
future of this,
the future of the generation of this nation, and you're just there, and you're a miserable person, and because they also have stuff going on. And now as I'm older, I also realize like, hey, hurt people. And these teachers are upset and frustrated because they have their own stuff going on, or they're going through a divorce, or, you know, something major in their life, which I understand, but it's like, hey, you have an obligation to these children. 100%. And so that's why I have a really hard time with bad teachers. And we had a really bad, crappy teacher in high school in our art workshop class, and he thought it would be okay to, well, go ahead, Danny.
So, like, I'll be honest, I don't remember like all of the details. There's the details that obviously stick out to me, which we'll cover, but I don't remember like the context of whatever was happening. But essentially, it was, you know, going back to what my dad had told me, like, you could say anything you want as long as you say it respectfully. Mm-hmm. Well, the way I took that and the way I take that now is, you know, respect goes two ways.
Goes both ways.
Right? Now, also in what we teach, like, if you want to get respect from someone, you need to give someone respect, right? We talk about that at Echelon Front all the time, even though we kind of have this mentality of, like, respect is earned. Like, I get it, but you also have to show that respect to people. And now, again, this is 40-year-old Danny, almost, you know, talking about this. How old would I have been then? Like,
you were 17.
17? Yeah, 17-year-old Danny, not the same mentality. So, essentially, as you said, we had this instructor who felt pretty freely to kind of talk down to people and directly call you names and tell you to, you know, shut your effing mouth and stuff like that. And
he was a
real talk,
bigger guy. He was taller, but he was also unhealthy bigger guy. Right. So he thought he was a bully. He was a straight up bully of a teacher.
Yeah, legit.
And would just bully and pick on kids because he could get away with it.
Yeah.
Because the administration staff that we had at Del Campo back in that day, they didn't do anything about it. They were horrible.
That was good self-censorship.
You like that? You like that? We're trying to keep these rating. We're trying to keep the rating good.
Keep it clean. But yeah, like So essentially, that was kind of the mentality in general, and if I remember correctly, the original thing that kind of got me worked up was he was talking to somebody else in that manner, and then I had said something like, "Hey, man, why don't you like?" Yeah, I'm sure I didn't say the most respectful phrase or whatever, right? Being 17-year-old and young and dumb and full of inspiration, and so I heard someone else say that recently, so I'm stealing it, but in any case, so I said something about it, and then he basically went direct conflict with me and started, you know, F-bombing me and like, why don't you get the, you know, blah, blah, blah.
He told you to get out of the effing class.
Yeah. And so I made a decision, and I will say this, it was a calculated decision. I never really just flew off the handle, but it was one of those like, I'm going to get in trouble for this, worth it type things, right? So I decided I was going to address that conflict. So I started to maneuver my way towards him, and I'm sure
in an aggressive manner.
I'm sure saying some expletives, and then JP ended up on my back like a JanSport, and literally yelling no, and put me in a rear naked choke, and choked me out in the middle of our workshop to stop me from getting to this guy. And needless to say, that was my last day in art workshop. Yeah, they kicked me out and put me in on-site suspension for the rest of the year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So here's what I will say that I've always kind of had a decent handle on, at least, was owning my stuff.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
You never made excuses for that. You never. Yeah. No.
And it's kind of like my mom told me at that point, like, because I mean I was getting in a lot of trouble, right? Obviously, but she was like, "Hey, I don't ever want to be caught off guard. Respect me enough to tell me exactly what happened. So if and when you get in trouble, I'm not being caught off guard." Yeah. So I would flat out go home and be like, "Hey, Mom, like, here's what happened today. JP became a Jansport and choked me out in our workshop to stop me from getting to Mr. So-and-so.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that happened more than once. And that's when yeah, we had some bad teachers, but like I was the problem too, and just the anger and the way I would act out. Because I had a similar issue. There was a class called Academic Decathlon.
Yep.
First of all, I should not have been in that class, right? It's like a class for the smart kids, and I don't know how I squeaked in, right? Because I just had no effort. I wasn't doing anything. And I had the same type of incident. And now that particular teacher, he had a lot going on in his life. Looking back now, I feel really bad about this. But he kind of said the same thing. He was like, hey, sit down, shut your effing mouth. And I was like, well, you can't talk to me. And so we exchanged some words, and it didn't get to that level, but I started to walk out, and he was still barking at me on the way out. And I turned around, and I was holding a bottle of soda, Dr. Pepper.
Yep.
And he was yelling at me from the door. And I turned around, and I tried to throw it at him. And the door closed, and it hit the door. And I walked straight to Miss Pierce's office,
Yep.
right, the principal. And I walk in, she's on the phone, and she looks at me. She knew me by then. And she's like, what? I'm like, just wait. And I sit down. And I sit down on the couch. And then the phone rings. He's this and that, blah, blah, blah. But I remember they had my mom come down, because I called my mom directly. And I'm like, hey, here's what happened. And then he got in my mom's face in the office, started screaming and pointing at my mom's face too. And so I stood up and addressed it, and he's like, and then you kicked the door on your way out. And I was like, I didn't kick the door. He's like, yeah, you did. And I was like, no, I tried to throw Dr. Pepper at your face, but the door closed early. So another one of those, like I had no problem like owning these bad decisions I was making, but
right.
Man, it took me a while. It took me a while in my youth to get out of that.
Yeah.
And then of course, when our groups would go out and hang out and do some stuff, that also just led to bad decisions. So
yeah. What
but praise God, I'm not there anymore.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So
which is awesome. I mean, we'll transition in over to that soon. Is just like, just understanding that is not obviously the ideal path to
oh
be
man,
on.
it's a terrible path.
And you also knew it at the time.
Yeah.
It's not like you're like, man, this is awesome, but it's just
And even at that young age, these were choices I was making.
Yeah.
And for me to look back and say anything otherwise other than like, I chose those paths. I chose to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Now, emotional maturity, yeah, sure. It played a little bit of a role in there, right? But I teach my kids now, like, you have a choice. You could act this way or you cannot.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to take that path ever.
Yeah. For sure.
And I make it my mission, number one, to make sure that they have a dad around, no matter what.
Yeah.
And praise God, my wife and I, which we'll get into family stuff, but man, my wife's amazing.
Dude, she's
and
incredible.
our marriage is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah. All three of us sitting at this table definitely outkicked our coverage.
No doubt.
Dude, I married way up.
Danny always jokes. He's like, man, I just hope one day she doesn't realize it.
I'm in the same boat.
We all are.
Dude, I married way up. Like, she just got like real fancy LASIK surgery. I was like, I don't know if I want you to get this. What if you could like see me now? You know what I mean? Like, she's way too gorgeous for me. She's like, no. And I'm like, ugh. I'm going to have to pay this doctor to sabotage this.
Insert a cataract, please.
Yeah, right? I'm like, good grief.
It's, I think, a common theme that I've noticed with like amazing wives and women, just in general, like, Lucas, you were talking about my mom and you said grace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then when I was talking at the muster and I was sharing a little bit of my story about Amanda and I, grace, right? And I shared a little bit of it also on episode 1. And it's just like, it's the amount of messages I got from people going, I want to meet your wife.
Yeah.
Like, I want, like,
Amanda's amazing.
like her grace and same with your wife, like the grace that Ashley has just for not
grace,
for you
mercy,
in a
forgiveness,
in a bad way,
man.
but like that you, but just her, she's just a graceful woman of God, a woman of God who loves the Lord, who allows you to lead her and the family, but she also leads you and the family. It's incredible. She's an amazing woman of God.
Without a doubt.
And
one of the most faithful people
yeah,
I've ever met.
Just gorgeous inside and out, and it's just, she's an amazing person. But before we actually, I'm gonna go back to something, but let's like talk about how you and Ashley met and you know?
Yeah. So
family and from, yeah.
So I had this, man, that rough patch for me, it lasted quite a while.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately it led to some pretty heavy drinking and some just unhealthy coping mechanisms, and which runs in my family. My dad was, you know, praise God, I never saw it, but my dad was like a raging alcoholic prior to me being born. So all my brothers, it's almost like obviously we had the same dad other than my half brothers, but growing up, same dad, but different dad.
Oh, got it.
You know what I'm saying?
Got it.
And basically, I was an oopsie baby when my mom and dad got together. So when my mom was getting ready to have me, she basically told him, hey, you need to quit drinking. You need to quit doing all that. So he was in and out of, you know, he went to ION. He got locked up for a while and was a heavy drinker. And he grew up in Richmond, California, in like Pinole area.
Yeah.
And around that time, you know, one of the only white dudes walking up and down the street. So he was fighting his way home and fighting his way to school. And back in those days, it was a little rough, right? So, but in any case, so he grew up rough, and that led to a lot of the problems that he ended up having, and then a lot of the issues that our relationship had as well. But anyway, I remember where I was going with that. But so my path ended up a lot of drinking, and then when I would drink, a lot of anger.
Yeah.
Right. And you were around you witnessed a lot of that. And basically one day, which we'll get back into the career thing coming up, but after I got into my career path, I just realized one day, like, there's too much on the line. There's too much on the line here. I've worked too hard to get to where I'm at. Yeah. And I am one decision away from being dead or in prison.
Yeah.
Like, I got to stop doing this. So I stopped, and I kind of had this literal come to Jesus moment, which we can get into as well. And that led me down a better path. And I actually met my wife at a Christian college group. And I was coming off of a period of a toxic relationship with another girl, which, bless her heart, she's doing great now. She has my ex has a family and kids, and
that's awesome.
Great for her.
That's what we want for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But man, we were toxic, and that just caused me to be even worse. Which is an excuse. Of course, I could have made the choice, but I fell into that. So in any case, I kind of made this commitment to God that I was like, hey, I'm going to stay single. I'm going to work on myself. I started going to counseling.
That's right.
Just try to figure out. I was like, man, I got to figure this out. I can't walk through life like this. I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I was like, I don't want to end up being my dad. You know, I don't want to end up with a broken relationship down the road. I just don't want to be that person. So, one of my really good friends, Matt Bulber.
Yeah.
Remember Matt? Him and I are still very, very close. And we met at like a car shop or something. And so we started going to this college group at Adventure Christian Church.
Yeah. It was in
Rockland.
Yeah. Okay.
So we started going to that, and it was a youth group. Went to that for a while, and then switched over to Bayside Christian in Granite Bay, which is still an amazing church.
Yeah. Cody and Paige were going there on and off for a while.
Yeah.
And when we were back home as a family, Amanda and I went there with them to church. It was good.
Anytime I end up back in California, Ashley and I try to go back to Bayside.
Yeah.
And in any case, so they had a college group called The Shore.
Okay.
I believe it was called The Shore. And I had kind of made this fleece with God that I was like, hey, I'm going to stay single for a year. I'm going to work on myself for a year. I'm going to go to counseling for a year.
And you came up with this on your own. Nobody said, hey, Danny, you should probably do this. Hey, you need to think about this. So you were able to do an honest self-assessment and come to a realization of like, hey, something needs to change.
I'm on a path for death.
Okay, well, that's a legitimate self-defining moment. Self-realization and defining moment.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm literally on a path for death or prison. And we can go back to my actual salvation moment coming up. But anyway, so I started going, and here's the cool thing. If you want to see how God works, right? So I made this fleece with God. I'm going to stay single for a year, so on and so forth. And I started going to this college group, but I'll be honest with you, I found I was like hunting, right? I was hunting, and I was like, gosh, like there's so many pretty girls here and all that. So I told my friends at the time, I was like, hey, I'm going to come late and then I'm going to leave early because I need to be here to be fed, and I need to be here for the right reasons and not just to be like searching out a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right. So I did that for months and months and months and months. The weekend of 1 year fleece, Ashley walked up to me at church and introduced herself. Was like, "Hi, I'm Ashley." Right? I had literally been praying like that if I was going to meet another girl, I wanted it to be the right girl. I wanted it to be a God-loving, God-fearing Christian. I was pretty specific. I even prayed for like, I don't even know if this is righteous or not. I prayed for like blonde hair, blue eyes. Right?
You got to be specific.
Hey,
in your
God
prayers.
says make your prayers specific, right?
Yeah, that's it.
So now here we are, right? So on the 1 year, where after the service, my buddy's like, "Hey man, you need to come hang out. Come out to the fountains."
Yeah.
They did like there's a yogurt shop. I don't know if it's still there or not. But so I'm like mid bite, like just stuffing my face, and this pretty little girl comes walking up to me. She's like, "Hi, I'm Ashley," and I'm like, "I'm Dan," right? And
I'm yogurt. I mean,
yeah, yeah, exactly right. And so she introduced herself. I had a buddy named Jake, and she like swim moved Jake to like she's like right over him and was like, "Hi, I'm Ashley." And he even said, he's like, "Did you just swim move me to get to Danny?" And she was all embarrassed. Yeah. It's pretty funny. I had one of those songs, you can like pay someone to write a song.
Yeah.
I had him write a song, and that's in the song. Like, you swim move Jake to get to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty legit. But yeah, awesome. So we met at that Christian college group, and man, as soon as I laid my eyes on her, I was like, this is the one. I knew within 2 weeks, I was like, I wanted to marry this woman. And she came into my life at a rough point too. Not a bad rough point, but like I was getting ready to go into my medic academy, and I flat out told her, I was like, "Hey, look, the next like 2 years is going to be hectic and stressful. I'd love for this to go further with you, but like, hey, this is where I'm at, and it's either you're on board or you're out."
Yeah.
And she was like, "I'm in." And we just celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary and 15 years together, on the 10th.
Yeah.
So yeah, 11 days ago. And grace of God has been the thing holding me together.
Dude, that's
through
incredible.
a lot of stuff.
I love that story, and I definitely want to make sure that we gave Ashley just a proper shout out on this podcast because but for what she does at home to allow you to do with what you do at Echelon Front, you talk about cover and move, the first law of combat that we teach at Echelon Front, she covers down on everything so that you can be on the road and traveling and working and delivering impact, like massive impact that you do with all the clients that you work with at Echelon Front. And especially the program you and Cody are building up for the first responders and everything that you do for us for all the field training exercises and speaking at the muster. But she does it in a way that allows you to do this amount of travel without adding stress to your plate.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Now, I know you were like, you're like all of us, like, I would just like to be home every day with my family, and you miss your family, and your kids miss you, and you miss your kids. But she covers down in a way that allows you to work at such a high op tempo without adding stress to your plate, which is incredible because it's hard. It's hard for spouses.
Yeah,
to do
she's
that.
a trooper. She's tougher than me in every way, shape, and form. She, things go wrong on the home front. I don't even know about it.
That's incredible.
I don't even know about it because she handles it. She's very self-sufficient. She's an amazing mommy to our boys. She's an amazing wife. And to top that off, so she does real estate on the side. So she works part-time. She's the director for our kids' school, our co-op, like Christian co-op program. She's not exactly just sitting around. You know what I mean?
No, she's not.
So
it's crazy.
Man, she's legit. Like I said, I need to make sure her eyes don't get too good.
Well, she's kind of full pot committed to you right now.
Yeah, that's true.
With the kids.
That is true.
You've alluded to it a few times, and I know the story. It's a very just dynamic story. You said your salvation moment. How old were you, and like, what happened?
My salvation moment's a little unique.
Yeah.
Right. As I kind of alluded to, I was an angry kid. I was involved with some bad stuff, some stuff I'm not proud of. And essentially I ended up getting into it with some guys over, I think this particular incident was over a girl. So you know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was between 14 and 15. And I was walking home from summer school because I had like F's in every topic. And long and short, I kind of had some beef with some guys, and they rolled up on me like 3 cars deep, full of guys. And I was walking with 2 of my buddies, if they ever hear this, Hilton and Matt. And I haven't talked to them in decades, but they were walking with me. These guys surround me, and they start, wanting to rough me up and X, Y, and Z. And I told Hilton and Matt, I said, hey, leave. And they're like, no, we're not leaving you. And I'm like, dude, there's no reason for all 3 of us to get killed here. Like, go get help. So they bail out, and these dudes surround me, pull a gun out. And, of course, they're like, get on your knees. And being young, stupid, prideful me, I'm like, no. Like, you're either going to shoot me standing up or whatever. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know if that's young and stupid.
Well,
if you're going to do it,
situation's not ideal.
Well, yeah, the whole situation's not ideal, but
so we exchanged some words, and at that moment, like, you have to understand too, at that moment in my life, I was so angry all the time.
Yeah.
I never really cared if I made it home.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not like actively trying to not make it home, but it's like, I just didn't care.
Yeah.
Right. For a long period of my life. Because I was just like, whatever, man. Like, it is what it is. And so some, things went down there. They start roughing me up. I break away from the group, and I start running. And they jump back in their cars, 3 carloads full of dudes, and they're hanging out of the cars with guns, and they're hunting me, like, in this neighborhood. Yeah. And I start jumping fences, and I'm jumping fences literally like backyard to backyard to backyard. And probably the second or third fence I jumped over, like my foot or something got caught, and I hit head first on the ground. And when you hit something so hard, like you hit your head, you hit your chest, like it forces the wind out of you. Mm-hmm. I had that moment where it's like I couldn't capture my breath, I couldn't anything. And I had this clear as day moment. I won't say I heard God speak, because I don't know that I verbally heard God speak. Mm-hmm. But it was a very clear message to me that if these guys catch you and these guys kill you today, you're not saved. And it was like, oh my gosh. Whoa. So, yeah. And keeping in mind, like, when my real young days, my mom and dad were like leaders of the men and women's like Stephen's ministry. Right. And then our whole lives fell apart. And then it's like, I just went as far away from the church as I could, because I hated every aspect of the church. But I hit that ground, and it was clear as day. Hey, if these guys kill you right now, you're going to hell. You're not saved. I hid in a chicken coop for 3 hours behind this old lady's house. And I could hear them driving in circles and circles and circles looking for me, till finally they went away, went and knocked on this. I feel so bad. This little old lady was terrified. I crawl out of her freaking chicken coop and start banging on her door. And so she had a bunch of dude neighbors came over with guns, like trying to figure out who is this kid, what's going on. I'm trying to explain to him what's going on. Anyway, they call my mom. My mom shows up. She was running the gym. Yeah. She shows up with a bunch of meatheads from the gym. They get out, all these personal trainers, and I'm like, they got guns. Get in the car, Yeah. And I immediately that day, mind you, I don't have a great relationship with my dad, but at that time, my dad was still, and he died this way too. He was a diehard Christian. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, take me to Dad's house. So my mom takes me to my dad's house. I tell him what's going on. I told him what just happened. And he's got a past life too, right? So some of our family members and tied in with some biker. Yep. Won't say the actual you-know-who's, but whatever. So he's like, it's wartime, right? So I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm calling so-and-so, and I'm calling so-and-so. I'm getting them all up here. And I'm like, no, put the phone down. Here's what happened. Here's the message I got. I need to be saved. I need to say a prayer of salvation. Or I think I called it a sinner's prayer or whatever. Yeah. And he just kind of put the phone down and was like, okay. So we went in the living room. I bawled my eyes out. I asked for salvation. I invited Jesus into my heart and gave my life to Christ that day.
That's amazing.
And And then everything just got worse. It's kind of funny, right? We always hear these stories about like, I gave my life to God and everything's never been the same. It's like, man, it just got darker and darker for a long period of time. But
why do you think that is?
It's choices I was making.
Okay.
Right? It was choices I was making. It's like, people think if I just give my life to Christ and I just keep living the way I'm living,
there you go,
that it's going to be okay. And that's not the case.
Yeah. There has to be, you have to change your habits and tendencies.
Yeah. And I didn't.
I didn't. Yeah.
Now, I believe I was saved at that point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had that realization. I believe 110% God placed that on my heart. Mm-hmm. Where else could that possibly come from?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Danny's not thinking.
There's no way. Let's just clear this up. Danny is not thinking. Right? Like, period, at this point. So, like, I truly believe that my salvation moment was there, but I just didn't change anything.
But there was no lifestyle change to back it up.
Yeah, I didn't change anything. And things just kind of spiraled out of control.
Okay. Between
that period and then the period of meeting my wife.
Yeah. Okay.
Things were just dark.
It's very impressive to me what you said, that you had that realization. Obviously, God put that on your heart. He spoke to you, and then you call your dad. And I love the rawness of that story. And you call your dad, and you go to your dad and you tell him, and he does what most fathers would do. Be like, oh wait, hold on. Oh, you came after my son with guns? Cool. Well, I've got some friends.
Yeah, man.
Who are not opposed to violence.
Yeah. They were pretty good at violence.
Yeah,
so
and we'll go handle this.
Yeah.
But it just shows you, even though that you said, hey, my dad was a strong Christian, it shows you that if we are not being intentional with our walk with the Lord and seeking his presence and seeking his redemption and his peace and his grace and his forgiveness, and if we're not being mindful and intentional to be in his presence, it's really easy for us to open those doors and be like, oh, I'm just going to call my friends and we're going to get our weapons and we're going to go handle business. But it's awesome. It's awesome how you were actually able to lead your dad and say, hey, Dad, stop. No. I don't. I'm sure on the inside you're kind of like, dang, this is awesome. Because my dad, man,
it's a good feeling to know your dad's like, hey, let's wipe out the world for you.
100%. 100%. But you knew that was the wrong thing.
Answer.
And because, nobody, unless no good people think and want violence to be a part of their lives.
No.
It's and so you're able to recognize that, which is great.
Which just goes to show you too, like, and we teach this all the time at Echelon Front, like.
Hey, let me clear up what I just said. I said no good people want violence in their life. Here's the deal. Your dad was a good person. He had violence in his life. You're a good person. You've had violence in your life. I'm a good person, I think. I've had violence in my life, right? Where you go back to those violent modes.
No one prefers that.
Exactly. Nobody prefers it. Like, I want to live in this environment of violence. No, that's spiritual warfare. That's good versus evil, and
it also comes down to, like, I believe it's Jordan Peterson that says that, like, you should be a monster than be able to control it.
Yep. Oh yeah, I love that
like,
little talk.
That's really what it comes down to. And look, that's the center of ownership, right? We talk about this all the time at Echelon Front. If there's one thing that you could take ownership over that no one could ever take away from you, it's your response to stimuli.
Yep.
Right? Yep. And you could either make the right decision or the wrong decision. Yeah. And, as I mature and then, of course, come further in my path, it's like we have to make those choices more and more, right? Yeah. And you have to own those decisions. Yeah. But, so that was like my first, that was my salvation moment, but that wasn't the turning point in my life. It was for eternity.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yes.
But not here.
Yeah.
So things just got a little rougher after that.
Okay. So gets rougher. You meet Ashley. You tell that incredible story, which is so cool. Like literally to the year.
Which, by the way, one part I left out, she had also made a fleece with God that because she was coming out of a bad relationship, she went to go live in Sweden for 6 months and study abroad and do stuff like that, right?
That's right.
And she had made a fleece with God saying, hey, I'm going to stay single. I'm not going to date anyone. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to focus on myself. I'm going to focus on God until I go back and get into school. And this was the very first week of her school. So it was like, on both ends, man. Yeah.
I love when I hear stories like that because there's nobody that can convince you that God is not real.
No. And not even at that point, but how dumb I am is I still doubt stuff. And then I had further experiences, which hopefully we'll get to, that
we will.
Now
undeniable.
Yeah,
we'll get to it. And I definitely be respectful of our time with our listeners and your time, because we have a Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu event today, which
yes, we do.
Fired up about. You're going to be sharing your testimony there, and it's going to be awesome.
I'm going to be getting beat up there as well.
We all are. Okay, so you meet Ashley. You're in school. Get us to your career, like whatever point you want. And I'd like you to get to the highlight part of your career of being a part of that cool group.
Yeah. So essentially 9/11 happens.
Yep.
Right. You were in boot camp.
Yep.
I'm 1 year behind you in school, close in age, but 1 year behind you in school.
Yeah.
And I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember where I was. I remember seeing it. I remember that feeling. And man, I remember seeing just these overwhelming images of firefighters and police officers at Ground Zero, covered in dust, beaten, broken, but not conquered, and still working. And man, that imprinted on me. And I didn't know what I wanted to do quite yet, but I knew I wanted to do some sort of service. And at the time when I graduated high school, I was just working construction and doing some underground utilities and doing some odd jobs, working at like Lowe's, Home Depot, doing some stuff. But I always had this inkling on me. And initially, I actually wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be a sheriff. And I will never admit this to Jesse Rimbert if you're listening, because firefighters are superior. Let's just know that. Okay.
Shots fired.
It's all in love. I love that guy, man. He's my brother. But and
like Chris Cooper and all that.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. Chris Cooper. He's a lieutenant now, by the way.
Yeah. And one of his buddies that he was in the Air Force with was actually here at the muster.
Oh, really?
I met him. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Crazy small world.
I wonder who that was.
Cody's dad, 30 plus years law enforcement. But
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm surrounded by.
But firefighters are better.
Yeah, totally. I like one of my closest friends growing up. I won't
quality
say his,
of life, yes.
Yeah, I won't say his name, but I think he's doing some spec ops stuff with the department where we came from. But I love cops, and I wanted to be a sheriff, but
yeah,
I made some of those decisions that kind of disqualified me for about 10 years. Right?
Same.
So yeah, same. So anyway, I started working and whatnot, and then but I just couldn't get those images and those pictures out of my mind. And so I decided to go to EMT school because one of my brothers was my initial influence. He was an EMT, and then he was a combat corpsman, stationed with Fleet Marines for a handful of years, and then came out, became a paramedic, started doing flight stuff and teaching. So that was like my original influence into the field.
Yeah.
So man, I got laid off one summer or one winter from construction, underground utilities, because you can't do it when it's pouring down rain.
Yeah.
Went to EMT school, loved it. First time as a student ever, I was like, I can't get enough of this. Absolutely loved it because it was something I chose.
Yeah.
Went from there, started working 911 on an ambulance up in the Northern California area. Within the next year, I was like, hey, I want to go to paramedic school. I want more of this. So I went to paramedic school with the Sac City Fire Program it's now out of Sac State University. And that was my first real exposure to the fire service because it was a fire-based program. And then I kind of had this thing of oh man, I can do all this medicine and break stuff too and fight fire. That's the best of both worlds, because I'd run calls and I'd see Big Red pull up, that's what we call the engines, and these dudes pile off, and I was like, I want to do that. And those pictures, looking back at 9/11, the 343 firemen that paid the ultimate sacrifice, and all the law enforcement officers. So anyway, I started progressing down that path, man, and then pretty fortunate. There were some unfortunate things that caused big family moves, but man, I got to work in California. I worked in Texas. Then I lateraled out to Idaho, where my last position was. And I really got to touch everything I've ever wanted to do in the career. I got to do a lot of special operations groups, tech rescue groups. I've taught medic and EMT programs collegiately. I became, part of cadre, field training officers at different departments. And then I had the honor of crossing over, going through selection, and serving as a SWAT medic for a handful of years with the special operations groups with PD. at the last agency I worked for.
Heck yeah.
Which is...
Those guys are awesome.
Dude.
Like, freaking studs.
All of them.
Yeah. I've gotten
very
to meet them,
group.
which was really cool.
Yeah.
And I was very, very
Yeah, that's right.
impressed.
You came out and worked. Worked with our department.
Yep.
And yeah, they are. There's some studs. There's some studs in that group.
Yeah.
And it was an honor of a lifetime, man. It was going through selection was awesome. It's nothing. Let me just preface this. It's nothing like what you guys go through. It's kind of a short-lived torture session trying to get you to drop.
It's still a hard selection program.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean,
you had to
figure out what you're made of.
And you're training to get ready for that.
Yeah, I trained
very intentional.
Yeah, I trained for about a year and a half, getting ready to go through selection because I wanted to dominate it. And then this is kind of, I don't know if we can talk about this gross part, but then about 2 hours into my selection, my tailbone exploded.
That's fun.
Remember I told you? I don't know yeah. So that sucked.
What does that mean? Your tailbone exploded?
Yeah. So I won't go like too in detail because it's kind of gross. But essentially, what I did not know was for many, many years, I'd had pain. I broke my tailbone snowboarding when I was like 18.
Okay.
So I always had pain like in my tailbone. If I sat wrong or sat out, I just kind of chalked it up to previous trauma. Turns out I had a huge cyst right over the nerve bundle by my tailbone, on the top part of my tailbone. And we're like hour 2 into selection, and we're doing like flutter kicks on concrete. And I just have this excruciating internal pain in my tailbone. And I'm like, oh man, what was that? And turns out it exploded. And
whoa.
Yeah, so then and I got to that point where I was like, it already hurts. So I'm not gonna quit. You know, and they check on you throughout the day. It's not that long. I mean, they activated us at like 03, and we were done like later that night. So, I mean, but it's a good anywhere from 12 to 18 hours of just smoke sessions, screaming at you, written exams, gas chambers, like standard stuff you guys go through for like 6 months, right? So, but I was like, well, and they check, and they're like, any injuries? And I'm like, nope, good. You know, like, nope. And then they tell you right after, like, don't go through selection, get the day off of work afterwards. I'm not very smart. So, like, I had done a bunch of Echelon Front assignments, so I owed dudes a bunch of shift trades.
Oh, yeah. So
I went through selection, and then from selection, went straight to the station. And then I had to work a 72. So, because I owed guys some hours.
Yeah.
By the end of my 72, I couldn't sit down, and it was so, I won't go into the details because it's disgusting, but basically I had to go straight to the ER after that, and they had to open me up and surgically repair
your exploded tailbone.
Yeah, and then I had to get it packed and unpacked every 48 hours for like 3 weeks. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. It was not ideal. Not ideal. The doc's like, you need to come back tomorrow. We can clean it again. I was like, I can't. I got to go to work for 48 hours. I owe guys a bunch of days. He's like, it's not really an option. I'm like, you don't understand. You're right. It's not an option. I'm going to work.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I was running calls. I couldn't sit down in the engine. I was like kneeling down in the back because I couldn't sit. It sucked. but I would do it all over again.
Yeah, for sure.
For those guys.
Absolutely.
Love every one of them.
You know, one of the things, we talked about in high school, you're like, hey, I was a bad student in high school, got bad grades. And then when you started going into the EMS and fire world, you said you couldn't get enough.
Oh, man.
You couldn't get enough of it. Do you think, obviously it's because it's something that appealed to you and that you loved, and it changed your mindset towards this pursuit of knowledge so that you could apply the knowledge, as we've talked about, and knowledge is not power. The application of that knowledge is what makes, you have to take action.
Yeah.
Application of knowledge is powerful, is power. That's what makes you powerful, is when you apply knowledge and apply all these things that you know. With that new that new passion that you had towards this learning, what's your thoughts and opinions on how everyone's like, hey, go to high school, go to college, go get a degree, get a good job? Like, if you would have followed that path, like,
I wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
Okay, yeah.
If I'd have followed that path.
A lot of people, I think a lot of people are doing that because they think that's what they're supposed to do. And how can an 18, 19-year-old kid know what they want to really do with life until you've experienced some life?
That's my point. And that's, so I have 2 boys, as we talked about. And so my wife's family is huge on education, which is good. Education's a great thing.
There's nothing wrong with that. I
my
think it's
father-in-law is like degree.
Yeah.
I get it. He's also a freaking electrical engineer. So he has to have that degree to do his job. He's extremely bright, right? Extremely bright.
Yeah.
Like so smart. When I ask him a question, I'm like, hey, just give me the answer. I don't care how you got to it. I don't understand anything you're saying. You know what I mean? But like for me, and I think for most youth these days, they're geared towards like get out of high school, go to college, and then you'll know what you want to do. It's like you're going to go to college for something that's not going to get you into the path that you want.
Yeah.
And I know for me, and I can just speak for myself, I had to go figure out what life was about and what I wanted to do before I figured out the pathway for college for me. Yeah. And then after I went to medic school and after I went through fire academies and after I started working on the job, we call it the job because it's the best job in the world. But when I was on the job, I just knew I wanted to progress further. So the medic program I went to, because it was a pilot program with Sac City Fire, we didn't get any college credits for it. It was a trade school. Now I got nationally accredited and all that, right? Yeah. But we didn't get college credits. So I actually went back to college at 30 and finished out my 2-year degree at NTCC out actually out here in Texas. Yeah. And then still working in the field, and then went back to college again. I was at UNT for a couple semesters, and then we moved. But I went back to college again. So I graduate this December from Boise State University with my BAS and a minor in public health, so all my like pre-med stuff.
Yeah.
And then I have a couple classes to go to that I got to knock out some higher like chem classes and whatnot. And then I'm going to be applying for PA schools.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm in school full time while doing Echelon Front and doing this stuff, and through like an online program and an online accelerated program at that. So
no, thank you.
I do homework a lot
on
airplanes and like till 2 a.m. in hotel rooms.
Yeah, good times.
But it's because I discovered what I wanted to do for multiple years and then decided this is the pathway that I want to go.
That's good. You had a t-shirt apparel printing company for a while.
Here we go.
A little side hustle, huh?
Here we go.
That turned into a legitimate business.
So
how'd that start?
So I get bored. I get bored pretty easy, which is, that also led me to like all the extracurricular and special operations groups and all that in my career field. Cause like I conquer one thing and then I'm like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
And then I conquer that thing and I'm like, okay, what's next? And that led me to some amazing experiences.
Yeah.
Also led me to occupy a little too much of my time. But so
a little out of balance with that.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I failed on that dichotomy.
Yeah.
Right.
Ashley hated.
Oh man, yeah. So one day we were sitting around and there was a real popular like fire brand at that point. And I spent a lot of time on the ambulances working as a paramedic too before I went to fire and all that. Yeah. And I was like, man, there's really no brands out there that are recognizable, that are cool and popular and not like massively disrespectful and like more of like what's the word I'm looking for? Novelty type stuff. So I started a brand called American Medic Apparel. Yeah. And I started creating designs specifically for EMS personnel, emergency medical services, EMTs, paramedics. Fire guys and gals could wear it, but it was more geared towards the EMS professionals. Showed it to some friends, and they were like, dude, you got to do something. It just took off. And then I was unhappy with some of the quality of the printers. So, like any good person would do, smart business decision, I just went and spent like $25,000 on printing equipment and put it in my garage before I knew how to use it, right? My wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to print all of our own stuff. She goes, you don't know how to do this? And I'm like, hey, look, if I can stop someone from bleeding out, I can make a t-shirt. Like,
that's a good correlation.
Can't be that hard. Yeah. Can't be that hard.
I mean,
so man,
if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
You can dodge a wrench. If you can dodge a wrench, you can print a shirt. You know what I mean? So I started learning in my garage, just YouTube University. And then I actually went to some classes and stuff too, and we set it all up, completely converted my house, and then I fired everybody, and we just started printing all my own stuff, and then that started turning into like, hey, can you print for our church? Hey, can you print for this? Hey, can you print for that? So then I started printing for other people, and then we started printing Never Settle.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Which, by the way, created that design in my kitchen in 7 minutes with my wife. No big deal.
Yeah,
my wife's like a guru for that type of stuff. Her degree is in photography design, double major in business. It's like, and she graduated completely done at like 21. Yeah,
she's too smart for us to interview for the podcast.
She's like, she started college like when she was like 15 or 16 or something.
It's like
crazy.
Sarah, my sister Sarah.
Yeah, just like Sarah. Sarah's a savage. Amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then we started printing for other people. So then, I got bored. So I started Leatherhead Threadworks, which was like a print company. And really the only things we weren't doing was embroidery. So once the people doing our embroidery started screwing up, I spent like 20 grand on embroidery equipment, fired all of them. And then I just started learning how to do embroidery. And my wife's like, what are we doing? Next thing you know, we have like a full-blown operation. And we ran it for years. And it actually put quite a bit of stress on the marriage because I was prioritizing the wrong things.
Yeah.
When we talk about prioritize and execute, and we're supposed to be looking for that single highest point of impact, right? Or that single point of failure for the mission, I was out of alignment. And so I was pouring everything into that. And then the only reason we actually sold it, I wish I could have kept it and figured it out and made the right decisions for my family because it blew up. But when we moved to Idaho, I couldn't take, like 50,000 pounds worth of equipment. I didn't even have a house to live in, let alone start a shop.
Yeah,
I was so pissed when he got rid of all the stuff because he was printing all my stuff. So the reason why Never Settle went away is because I couldn't find anybody to print at his level of quality.
Yeah,
another print
OCD
shop
with everything.
Yeah,
so.
another
you don't say.
Another print shop had tried to do some work, and it was decent, but it wasn't. It was just ruined. I was ruined because of the quality of Danny's stuff, and so when he moved out of Texas, he was pulling a trailer leaving Texas, and I was pulling a trailer entering Texas.
Oh wow!
Yeah, literally on the same day.
Wow!
I was like, you got to be joking.
It was
Especially, I was trying to get him to move for like 6 years. He's like, I'm moving to Texas. I was like, I'm moving to Idaho. It's like
cool,
unreal, man.
Cool, that's awesome. But
I
mean, you learned a lot about business from that experience. Yeah,
ton of what not to do.
What not to do. What to do.
A ton of what to do, and it was a great experience, man. And I'll tell you what, there's not very many businesses that can go in business and be in the green within the first year. And then when we sold it, I actually made money. I sold the brand. I kept Leatherhead Threadworks, the rights to that.
Yeah.
But sold American Medic, sold the equipment. Because, we got all the way up to where, dude, I was running full automatic presses and pumping out 200-300 shirts an hour. Like,
dang.
Yeah, we were shaking and moving. Yeah. And, but yeah, so we sold it, made money, which actually helped pay for the move and stuff like that. And then I mentioned to my wife, I was like, we should start a company again. And just the look on her face, I was like, we're not starting a company again. I totally understand.
Yeah, I was just testing you, babe. Just
I
wanted to test you, just making sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah. But, and that was also in 16, 17, that's when you came out to talk to me too.
Yeah.
Because I almost lost my marriage at that point. I still to this day think that, I know, neither of them will admit it, I still think to this day that she called JP and was like, hey, come check your boy.
Nope.
Like, because I was in the wrong, I was doing everything wrong, man. And he came out, we were standing in the shop working on some of your stuff.
Yep.
And you started asking me all these deep probing questions.
The Holy Spirit just put stuff on my
how's life,
heart.
Danny? How are you feeling inside? I'm like, what the heck's going on, bro? And he's like, so he starts asking me questions. And, because of the relationship that we've had, we talk a lot about relationship capital and leadership capital at Echelon Front, right? And it's kind of a weird thing because if you say something to someone in a direct manner, like even Jocko will tell you, like 99.9% of the time, the indirect method's the best method.
Yes.
Right? 100%.
100, yep.
But if your relationship's good enough, you can use the direct method with someone occasionally, and it actually is not a withdrawal from that relationship. And that's how close we were. And I remember you looked me straight in my face and you were like, hey, bro, you know I love you. And I was like, yeah, of course. And he's like, and you said, you're the problem. And I was like, my first reaction was, I want to punch you in the face. Right?
I think I had created enough distance just in case.
You would have probably worked me anyway. It doesn't matter.
No.
But I was like, my immediate reaction was, dude, like, you're supposed to be my homie. You know what I mean? And then it was like, he is my homie. Like, I'm the problem. And that was kind of my first exposure to extreme ownership. And that was when you had first started working not with Jocko, but
with Echelon Front.
Yeah. And soon after that, you invited me to come out to the muster and check things out. And that was liberating for me, man, because I realized that was the first time I read the book, and I've read it, I don't even know how many times now at this point. Yeah. And of course we teach it all the time. But I was like, dude, all of these things I can change.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, sure. I'm sure my wife's pretty much perfect. And I don't mean that facetiously.
Yeah.
Right. But like, there may have been one or two things that she was contributing to, but it was my first realization of like, those things don't matter. I need to work on my things. And so in any case, first thing to work on was not getting another company.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to bring that up, but I'm glad you did, because it actually, you know, I think it ties into where we want to talk about some Bible verses, and then also, you know, so do you believe in spiritual warfare?
100%.
Okay.
Well, let me say this. I believe in it now.
Okay.
I always acknowledged it.
Okay. Yep.
Right. Being a Christian, I always believed in like the Trinity.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I don't really know how else to say this. I never gave the Spirit the respect it deserves.
Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
I was always like, yeah, of course, you know, Jesus, God, Holy Spirit. But the spiritual realm, I never gave the reverence.
That's good.
To that
so that trip out there was prompted by the Holy Spirit.
Oh yeah. Looking back now, 100%.
Yeah. Do you have a Bible verse you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I do. But with the context of how it changed from pursuit.
Dude, let's go.
So fast forward through all those things, right? Life's not bad. Life's not bad. Once I start taking some ownership. My wife, well, first of all, I don't even know if you know this portion. So, you know that, I mean, I was on the edge of losing my marriage.
Yep.
And so my wife started a Bible study from, I'm going to screw this up. I don't know the lady's name, but it's called War Room.
That would be Priscilla Schreier.
Priscilla Schreier.
It's like, why am I not asking our pastor?
Yeah. Yeah, come on, preach, man.
Samsonite. I was way off.
Priscilla Schreier.
Yeah, daughter of Tony Evans.
Yes.
Yep.
So she started this Bible study called The War Room. And it ended up becoming a movie, if I'm right.
That's correct, yeah.
So she started this study called The War Room. And it was her mom, her sisters, who were all godly women, right? And some of her friends. And basically, that was when she says she realized spiritual warfare was real. And she also says that's when she realized that she stopped viewing me as the enemy. And she started viewing spiritual warfare and the devil as the actual enemy. So she started praying for me out loud, because she says we just talked about this like a week ago too. Just kind of like reminiscing over it. She says, I started realizing that the devil is not as powerful as God, and therefore the devil can't hear my thoughts. So I have to speak out loud in prayer to cast him out, because he's not as powerful as God to be able to hear my inner thinkings, my inner thoughts.
That's good, man. That is
deep,
incredible.
Right? So that's like the power of speaking prayer out loud.
And that reiterates Stephen's point of he doesn't like the term quiet time.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And the reason why Stephen says that, it's not to be disrespectful or rude towards anybody that takes quiet time, meaning time away and alone to spend with the Lord. Right. But Stephen is very intentional about praying out loud and dude, that is awesome.
Yeah. So she kind of has this revelation, total God thing, right? So she goes to war. She went to straight war for our marriage. And she starts praying over me. You show up. Yeah. Right? We have this conversation. I start having some of these epiphanies. And and I'm not making progress like I should be, but it was kind of like, it was in a roundabout way. And then so she starts praying. And she says she starts, for the first time ever, praying out loud. Sweetie, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but bawling her eyes out, praying over me, and we have our son at that point's under 1 year of age, right? He's 8-9 months, and so she's praying out loud. She starts anointing my pillows with oil at night, anointing stuff of mine. I don't even know this is happening, bro. Right? And she's going to full blown war with the spiritual realm over this. Wow. And she said it changed her mentality and her view of me. Like when I was being a bad husband, man. Like, not like I've never cheated, I've never done any of that type of stuff, but like I wasn't being loving, I wasn't being caring, I wasn't
no empathy,
I mean nothing. And now keep in mind, my career is not helping that. I'm dealing with the underbelly all the time, which is an excuse. Like, it definitely has an effect on you, but again,
it has a legitimate effect. Yeah, you can choose, but when you're surrounded by trauma, and scum, I mean, dude, it's hard.
It is hard not to fall,
especially because your community at the time, there wasn't a lot of awareness or talking about it, and there's no resources for, hey, you're literally dealing and being exposed to all these horrible things all the time. Let's get our people some help. Yeah. There was none of that at that time.
And it's very much like, don't talk about it.
Yes.
Don't talk about it. Don't acknowledge it, which
I love that you recognize, yes, hey, that's on me. I could have done that. However, which I agree with, at the time, there wasn't the resources that first responders have right now. Yeah, there wasn't the awareness.
And we still need
more.
You
also weren't exposed to extreme ownership in regards to like, oh, I can control my attitude. Yes, I'm in these horrific environment. So I just want to add that for the listeners, because someone's listening and I don't want them to lose the true purpose of what you're talking about in regards to like, hey, you weren't doing the right things. You could have done the right things. Even though you had a horrible environment, you could still control your attitude. Yeah. And you could have been a much better husband.
Now, and don't hear me wrong. Like, and if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, hey, all the things that I'm dealing with are my fault, or all the ways I act out are my fault. Like, there is a certain extent of allowing things to influence you, but there's also a certain extent of things that we see and do that you need to get help with.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Like, and you need to get help with. And whether that's through therapy, whether that's through the church, whether it's, if you ask me, like, speaking to, a professional therapist that is a Christian is where I would go. Yeah. Right. And which is where I went. Yeah. And I went back to counseling again a couple times to try to deal with some of this stuff, because I developed through my career, as you know, like some severe anxiety. Yeah. Some, those letters none of us want to talk about, and stuff like that. But in any case, so I don't remember where we were going with that, but spiritual warfare.
Your wife went to war for you.
So she went. So that was kind of like the first, I guess, reckoning I had with like, oh, this is real, right? And then things were going good. We got to Idaho. Things were great, man. First year in Idaho was amazing. Second year, or towards the end of that, we got pregnant with our second, and that story was an absolute nightmare. We almost lost him twice. The pregnancy was terrible. We had no family, no help. She got put on pelvic rest, bed rest at week 7. And we have a toddler she can't pick up, she can't do anything with.
We're dealing with that right now.
Dude, my heart is with you, man. It was rough. And then he was born at 30. I'm going to screw this up. My wife will end up correcting me in the comments somewhere.
Yeah. Hopefully on YouTube.
Yeah. If you're on YouTube, Ash, correct me. Because one thing I've learned is whatever she says is correct. I know that. Yeah. But so I think he was born like 32 weeks and a couple days, right? And he, praise God, I won't go too far into the story because I'll turn into a blubbering child. But like when he was born, he was as blue as blue can be with central cyanosis, and they were having a pump on him. And they're reviving him, right?
Yeah.
And there's like a partition between him and my wife. And my wife's like, is he okay? Now, mind you, not only am I a medic, but I teach like advanced pediatrics and all kinds of stuff. So I know just enough to scare the crap out of myself. Right?
Did she have a C-section?
No.
No, okay.
No C-section. Basically, they got 2 rounds of steroids on. They were like, hey, you have up to 40 hours to get this kid out, and then it becomes a significant infection risk, right? Because she had already broke her waters and all that. Mm-hmm. But in any case, so I'm watching them pump on my baby and breathe for him, and she's like, is he okay? She's crying. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be okay. And like, it was just like this. It was like the upside down, like the 2 alternate realities, right? Anyway, so that was really rough. But in any case, so things keep getting, they're okay. We make it through it. I have some severe panic attacks and stuff like that in that year after that. And I had to go get some help, and it was starting to affect me at work and stuff a little. I couldn't run like calls with like babies and kids. Mm-hmm. Those are hard no matter what.
Right.
But then all of a sudden it was like my cap was like, hey, maybe you should step outside for this one. Thank God, because I had another medic with me numerous times and whatnot. But anyway, moving past that. And then I started just kind of like, I felt stagnant. I kind of got lukewarm for a while. And not like we're going to church and, you know, the marriage is good and things are okay. And we're not where we were earlier. And but I felt stagnant. And then I started working for Echelon Front. I made that leap, left my teams. And then that's been great for a lot of reasons. But I'll be honest with you, I think the most positive thing that's come out of Echelon Front, other than just obviously getting to work for Echelon Front, right, is amazing, is being back around you and being around, you know, other believers. Yeah. And being around, there's no other way to say this without sounding kind of rude, I guess, to other people, but like, I don't fit in most churches. Right? I haven't walked a church life. If you see me, if you're watching on YouTube, you see me in short sleeve shirt and shorts, I look like I'm straight off Cell Block C. You know what I mean? Like, my legs are tatted up on all the back. I mean, my chest. I mean, you know, I look like a scumbag like you, right? But
thank you.
Yeah. But what I mean is, like, when you get around other believers that have walked rough lives and seen and done rough things, it's easy to realize, like, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, you got to think of, like, who did Jesus spend the majority of his time with?
Yeah, man. I see that more and more. Like, there was somebody said something recently. It was some celebrity. I don't remember what it was. And I think I sent it to you. I don't agree with all of the statements of it. But they were like, hey, if Jesus was here right now, Jesus would be a biker. Type thing, right? Like, he'd be hanging out with bikers, and he'd be hanging out with the least of the least, and he'd be hanging out because that's who he spent his time with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because,
yeah. And I know I'm slaughtering the way that, however that was put out.
No, you're not. It's just because, well, Lucas, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I think I know the clip that you're referring to, and it's I think it's Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try not to soapbox here, but there are a lot of positive things about that because Jesus certainly did. Like, fishermen in that time were super, super rough dudes.
Yeah.
The caveat that I would add to it is that, like, he never let them stay there. Right, you didn't get to just be like the idea that we have is that, like, Jesus would go hang out with thugs and he would just be around the thugs. He would go do that, but he would inspire them, he would teach them, and he would just through relationship, which is what you guys talk a lot about at Echelon Front, right? He gained their trust, he gained their respect, so he was able to influence them, and then now he's able to show, like, care and then lead them in a way that they became fishers of men and leaders of other people. So the idea that Jesus would do that, absolutely 100%. That he would just be cool with them, hanging out and doing the things that they were doing, and Jesus would just be kind of like a fly on the wall. That was totally not what that guy was about. So
exactly.
I think that's the big distinction to make in there. But for sure, you know, and he was going, you know, when you go to places like the houses of the tax collectors, they were the traders of the Jewish people. Yeah. You know, like, imagine an invading army came in, took over the United States, and then one person in every city was like, you know what, I'm gonna go play for the other team, we would all hate them.
Yeah.
And those were the people that Jesus was like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I'm going to go eat at your house. You need to reconcile what you're doing. And immediately, just by his mere presence, guys like Zacchaeus were like, hey, look, so I reallocated all my assets. I'm giving everything to the poor, and I'm going to pay back double anything that I owe anybody. And Jesus was like, hey, it's a really good start.
Yeah.
So way to turn your community around. All right, I got to go. So it's that idea that if we were in that situation, he would not allow us to continue to be comfortable in our sin.
Yeah.
He
Like,
would force
live
us
in the
to
world,
move
not
out
of the
that.
world.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. And I think that's the biggest blessing is like coming to terms with, the path that I've walked and being around other men that are true godly men that have walked rough paths and done things and been there and seen that and done that has been a huge blessing for me at Echelon Front because there's a bunch of us, right? And any case, that led me down to the path of pursuit.
Yeah.
When your boss is like, you should go to this thing, and I'm like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden he clears my calendar and puts it on my work calendar. I'm like, check. I guess I'm going to this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which my brother-in-law is at it right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right
As
on.
we record this, he's at it right now.
So I know we're going to do another episode with you to dive. I want us to dive deep into pursuit and some other stuff on our next episode and really obviously what we do at Echelon Front even more so, which you've done a great job tying stuff back to Echelon Front and the principles we teach. But real quick, I know Lucas has a question or two for you.
Yeah.
I know he has a lot of questions, but we'll do a question or two. What was the Bible verse that you wanted to share?
So here's the one that, sorry, I got sidetracked. I just realized you were asking me that a while ago.
No. Bro, as you know, the format of this podcast it's Holy Spirit led. Like wherever we need to go, wherever we need to talk, like we're going with that.
So this Bible verse is Ezekiel 36:26. And it may not seem significant now, but it's significant based on my pursuit journey and what happened there and the way the Spirit and God met me. And it reads, I'm a terrible reader, so here we go. And I will give you a new heart and a new spirit I will put within you. And I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. And that was this was revealed to me at Pursuit. And after I had actually shared with the group are we allowed to talk about some of the processes? Sure. I don't want to reveal too much because I don't want to ruin it for people going, but there's a moment on these things. And one of the things I said verbatim before I had ever even read this verse was, this is where I start to get torn up and cry like a little baby.
Good.
One of the things I said coming out of that moment was like, I'm mad at God and I have a heart of stone. And it was before I had ever read this verse. And then I had some encounters and some experiences. And then this verse was revealed to me. And it, rocked my world, dude.
And then if we want to add just a confirmation, the random.
Which thing, man?
The random letter that my daughter wrote you.
Oh, man. Yeah. She essentially wrote about me having a hardened heart. Yeah. And so I opened the letter, and I don't know how to talk about this without revealing too much about Pursuit.
Just talk about what she wrote.
Yeah. So it was very short. And it just said, we love you. And she had a picture of a heart in there. And basically it said like something I don't even remember the exact details, but something to the effect of like God's going to change your heart and get rid of your hard heart. And I was just, yeah, man. And and that was after I had said that to the group. I got the letter from her, and then this was revealed to me later on.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, and when we get deeper into the experience of what happened, man, it's
crazy,
mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Dang.
And it's confirmation for me. I will never doubt.
Yeah.
I will never doubt my faith again. And that's a strong thing to say.
Yeah.
That's a bold statement. You know, it's bold statement, Cotton. You know,
Bold statement.
yeah, yeah. But it's real.
Yeah. Lucas, what do you got?
So the first thing that struck me as you're kind of talking about your background and especially your mom, right? Is what did your mom's example teach you about walking the line between professional success and parenthood?
Yeah, let me first preface it by saying this: like, I learned a lot from it, but not because she willingly taught it to me, just because she was forced into what she had to do.
Right.
Right. But for me, what I learned was, when we talk about, priorities, prioritize and execute and looking for highest point of impact, is the reason I do everything I do is for my family.
Yeah.
But if I'm not there for my family, then why am I doing it? Right. And I acknowledge that about my mom. My mom worked so hard, incredibly hard. And I hold nothing against her for the times that I had to spend alone, right?
Yeah.
Because if she didn't do it, we were screwed, right?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. But it did provide me with an example of I have to find that dichotomy of being able to make sure I'm providing, but also make sure I'm prioritizing my wife and my kids in that time. And I'm forever grateful to Jocko and Leif and the company, because we're very family oriented. Mm-hmm. And if you need time for your family, they'll tell you take time for your family.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. But that is something that stood out to me. Would I change it? I don't think so. I don't think I would change this. Sounds terrible. I don't think I would change the time that I lost with my mom or with my dad, because I think both of them needed to go through the things they were going through to solidify who they are. And I respect both of them. Both of them worked incredibly hard. My dad too. My dad prioritized the company over the family far too much. And then and here's the thing, in 2007, 2008, when the economy took a huge turn, my dad's whole company took a dump. And then it's like, well, what do you have to show for it now? Now you have a family that's dispersed and no money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of like really helps you solidify. You have to find that line, and I'm grateful for my mom, and we're very close now. Like I said, she lives with me and my wife.
Yeah.
It's so incredible.
So yeah.
It's awesome.
The second thing would be like, I also find myself in the boat of like, I'm getting bored. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I think that there are a lot of people that are kind of in our generation that are like that, because when you look at the kind of the X-Lennials that are on that line between Generation X and the Millennials, Gen Z, we're not like our parents or our grandparents. We're not going to stay, at yellow freight for 45 years and retire and all that. We're going to have them. The statistic is anywhere between 7 and 10 different careers, throughout our life. So how do we refocus instead of jumping ship every time, right? Because it's easy for us to look at like, oh, I think I want to do this, or, oh, this is an interesting thing, and I pour about a bunch of money, time, and resources into it, and then either it doesn't work out or it becomes successful, but now we're in that situation where like, man, I'm a fantastic t-shirt printer, but now it's taking over my life in an unhealthy way. How do we prevent those things from happening on the onset and prioritize?
I think the biggest thing would be kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, and we talked about like, are we going straight to college, or are we not going straight to college, and what are we trying to do? I mean, I think there's some value in figuring out what your true heart and soul's interest is before you dive into something. And I feel like when you take that time to yourself, and again, if you're a parent listening to this, please don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying steer your kids away from education, but what I am saying is steer your kids towards life.
Yes.
Right. Let them experience some things. Let them work things out. Let them put up those guardrails of failure that Jocko talks about. Let them bounce off some stuff and figure out what interests them. Because, I had a great career in EMS and fire and some of the cool groups I got to do. And I did it for a long period of time. And that was one of the only things that was consistent through my entire adult career until I had this amazing opportunity to come work at Echelon Front, right? And it was kind of more of the extracurricular things that ended up taking up my time. But career path wise, I picked a career after experiencing some life, and inside of that career path, when I got bored, I could expand in that career, right? So I'd conquer this thing. Hey, what else can I learn? What special team can I get on? What can I do here? What fear could I go conquer? What can, those types of things. So I think the important thing would be to really put effort and thought and take some time before jumping into something. It has to be a calculated move.
Yeah, it's one of the what you're talking about is what we teach at Echelon Front in regards to decision-making process, making small iterative decisions, right? You're making those small little iterative decisions to where you're not fully committed, and you can be like, oh, this is cool. I like it. Let me go, and just moving. I like it, man.
Yeah. And it's like when I say I get bored and I take on something else, I guess I should caveat that or clear this up by saying, like, I didn't change the rest of my career path.
Yeah.
I still had that thing going on. I was just taking on too much. So for me, that dichotomy, what I would need to learn is that, like, okay, if I'm getting bored or I have free time, I need to prioritize that time into something with my family or something that really matters rather than just trying to fill time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also think that for me and many people like me and many people coming out of the military or many people with stressful jobs, careers, if I'm being honest, a lot of what I was trying to do is occupy my mind, right? Because, they say idle hands, idle mind, right? Mm-hmm. That's where the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
And so a lot of stuff I just didn't want to deal with life sometimes. So I would try to fill as much time as I could.
Yeah.
I have to be aware of that, and people should be aware of that as well.
That's good.
Makes sense.
Well, man, thank you for coming on the podcast. There's a lot of value from there. And
honor to be here.
Yeah, man. In the future, I know I'm going to have you down, or Josh and I are going to have you down to help us tighten up all the stuff on the path printing.
We're going to do it.
We're going to steal his expertise and his knowledge, and
we're going to do it.
He's going to help us get it up and running. But
and you heard it here first. They're going to give me $7 off of each shirt printed.
Wow!
What?
Congratulations.
That means we make no money.
It's already a contract. I just made that up on air. He can't get away from it now.
7 cents.
I'll take it.
I'm just kidding.
Shoot.
All right, man. We appreciate and thank all of you guys for your support. The amount of downloads that we've had so far is
unreal.
It's unreal, but it's not unreal because we know God is good and we appreciate His blessings. And we just want to thank you guys for all of your support, for every one of you guys that are listening. All of you guys that have subscribed, that comment, that share it. Sharing it on social media has been huge for us, man. Which has been incredible. If you want to follow us on social media, Danny is at Danny Ziem 343. So at DANNY ZIEM 343, and that 343 is for the 343 firefighters that we lost when 9/11 hit.
Yes,
if you want to follow me on social media, I am at JP Dinnell. That's at JPDINNELL. And then our boy Lucas is at LUCASPINCKARD. And hey, make sure you guys are following us at Echelon Front. If you want to learn more about what we do at Echelon Front, go to echelonfront.com. That's ECHELONFRONT.com. You guys can check out future events. If you want Danny to come out and work with your department or your company, you can get a hold of us at echelonfront.com. If you have a little extra time, you want to check out, see what we're doing at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu, it's at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu _USA on Instagram. At Little Cattle Co. is a company that I am partners with. Get that beef, that Texas beef with Steven.
One of the best I've ever had.
Dude, it's unreal.
Real talk.
Unreal.
Real talk.
At Little Cattle Co. And our website is www.littlecattle.co. And then, as I talked about, what Josh Strasberg and I have is On the Path Printing. So I'm partners with those companies. As you guys know, my primary focus is Echelon Front and will always be Echelon Front. But it's amazing, just the opportunity that I was talking about on Jocko's podcast recently. Just being able to do these other things has been a gift from God, and I'm thankful for that. Man, Danny, this episode was very impactful, and the things that I want our listeners to think about before I close it out is submit and surrender. Yeah. Just submit your life to God, surrender your heart to your loved ones and your spouses and your family, and make sure you're living your life intentionally. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 5.